All right. So, walking through your immune response, your innate and your inflammatory response are both non-specific. Those are going to be the first things that attack a pathogen. The adaptive response is specific to it and it needs to know the enemy, which means it's going to need to identify it with the help of a macrophage or dendritic cell. So, let's start from the beginning. Your first line of defense is going to block most pathogens from getting in your body. That's going to be things like your skin, your mucus secretions, oils, hair, tears, things like that are going to keep out most pathogens. A reminder that a pathogen is anything that causes disease, like a bacteria or a virus. Something like an allergen would not be a pathogen because even though our body's attacking it, it is not something that's causing disease. So that's why that's referred to as an allergen and not a pathogen. So we'll talk about that when we talk about the inflammatory response. When the bacteria gets in, it's going to be releasing chemicals called chemokines. And also our cells, when they get damaged by the bacteria virus, also release chemokines. And those are going to activate and alert our immune system, our innate immune system. The four cells that immediately activate are phagocytes, begin eating the macrophage and dendritic cells. The neutrophils are the first to arrive. They are going to come in large numbers and just begin killing the pathogens in all sorts of ways, just throwing themselves and exploding themselves, exploding out sticky nets that trap the bacteria, shooting little sharp granules that kill them. Natural killer cells are going to come make a messy attack that shoot perforin proteins that put holes in the cell wall of bacteria and viruses, but it's going to cause a lot of collateral damage, meaning it's going to kill a lot of our healthy cells in the process, which is why we get a sore throat when we're sick. It is not due to the pathogen, it's actually due to our own immune response. And then mast cells are going to initiate the inflammatory response. So the mast cells are loaded with histamine. They're going to release that histamine out of them. Whenever they sense chemokines, they release a histamine, which bonds to the histamine receptors on the endothelial cells. I'll label that right here, the histamine receptors. When they bind to this receptor, it causes the cells lining the blood vessel to spread apart and to dilate. And when that happens, the white blood cells, the larger white blood cells, like more macrophages, dendritic cells, they're able to leave to enter the tissues to start fighting the pathogen. But it's also going to cause some red blood cells and fluids to leak out as well. That's what causes the redness and swelling that you see around inflammation. But inflammation is a good thing. It's allowing the white blood cells to arrive to the battle to help fight the pathogen. So that's why we see, but we do see as a side effect, the hallmarks of inflammation: redness, swelling, pain, also heat. Heat is going to come from the red blood cells, right? So they're going to cause redness, but also heat, and then the swelling from the fluids in the area pushes on the free nerve endings, and that causes pain. Anaphylaxis is when our body has overreacts, and instead of the mast cells in the local area releasing histamines, all the mast cells all over the body release histamines. So you can imagine that the blood vessels opening up all over the body is a dangerous thing, because the red blood cells are going to leak out, fluids leak out, the blood pressure is going to drop, and if it drops low enough, the kidneys won't be able to keep up, and the kidneys will shut down. Remember, the kidneys are the organ responsible for maintaining blood pressure, not the heart. All right, so coming back, one of these phagocytes, or a handful of these phagocytes, will actually eat the pathogen and then leave the battle. It's going to travel through your lymph system, through which runs parallel to your circulatory system, and it's going to begin to look. It's going to look for the one matching helper T cell that matches this particular pathogen. And this can take up to 6 to 8 days to find it because the body's a big place and it has to search through all your lymph vessels, lymph nodes to try and find it. When it finds it, it's going to match it by matching the protein from the virus with that helper T cell. When they successfully match, that helper T cell activates and begins releasing a bunch of cytokines and interleukins. Those are actually what give you the symptoms of being sick. So that's going to cause your fever response. It's going to cause you to be sore and achy. It's going to cause you to be sleepy. All those things that you associate, even losing your sense of taste and smell, are going to come from those cytokines and interleukins. That T helper cell is going to begin to divide, and it's going to go out and begin to activate two things, the humoral response and the cell-mediated response. It's going to go and activate a B cell. A B cell cannot make antibodies. It has to be activated and turned into a plasma cell. The plasma cell is what makes the antibodies. We call this a humoral response because it's going to go out into the humors or fluids of the body. It's going to target free-floating pathogens with the antibodies. Some B cells turn into memory B cells, which live forever. When the battle is done, these plasma cells die and are eaten and cleaned up by macrophages. The T cells are also going to go activate the cell-mediated response, which is other T cells. There are cytotoxic T cells, also called killer T cells. Those are going to use perforins to target infected cells. So at this point, the pathogen has taken over the area, and there's some free-floating pathogens in the blood, but there's also pathogens that have infected cells. So we're going to take out our infected cells to take out those pathogens, and then some T cells will turn into T memory cells, which live forever. So if we ever come in contact with that pathogen again, then it's going to eradicate it much more quickly. And that's what a vaccine does. A vaccine is going to activate these memory B cells and memory T cells so that the body never has to go through the battle and create all this collateral damage or go through this 6 to 8 days to go and find the correct helper T cell. It's just automatically going to begin to fight the pathogen. And that's going to mean a lot less symptoms of disease and a much quicker recovery time.